In 2015, a Texas father saved his son's life when doctors wrongly declared him brain dead and wanted to take him off life support. He barricaded the hospital with a gun and had a 3-hour standoff with a SWAT team until his son squeezed his hand. His son went on to make a full recovery. This awesome dad got a tattoo of his son's cancer surgery scar to show him that there's nothing to be ashamed of. This amazing father designed some shoes to give his paralyzed daughter the sensation of walking for the first time. A gay man from Italy named Luca Trapanese adopted a baby girl with Down syndrome after more than 20 families rejected her. Being a single gay man, he was told by social services that he would only be given a child with an illness or disability. He was later quoted saying, "When I first held her in my arms, I was overcome with joy and felt that she was my daughter right away." When Eminem relapsed in 2008, he called Elton John for advice on how to handle the superstar lifestyle. Elton ended up calling him every day for the next 18 months and became a significant part of his recovery. When disabled man Alan Parton was hit by a car, his service dog Endel immediately dragged him into the recovery position. The dog then pushed his cell phone into his hand, put a blanket over him, and ran to a nearby hospital and barked until someone helped. The man ended up surviving with only minor injuries. Harriet Tubman suffered a traumatic brain injury as a child, which often caused her to slip into sleep-like states. During these sleeps, she would have vivid dreams, which she interpreted as messages from God. They would inspire her to devote her life to freeing Southern slaves through the Underground Railroad. While filming for Sleepy Hollow, Johnny Depp became very close with his co-star, a one-eyed horse named Goldeneye. When he heard Goldeneye was going to be euthanized after filming, Johnny didn't hesitate to adopt the horse himself. When Volvo invented the 3-point seatbelt in 1959, they easily could have patented the design and made millions in profit. But they decided to make it free for all competitors and likely saved millions of lives instead. John Cena holds the Make-A-Wish Foundation record for the most wishes granted at 650. No other celebrity has even granted more than 300. For 20 straight years, a male stork named Klepetan migrated over 5,000 miles per year to be with his partner Milena, who lost the ability to fly after being shot by a hunter. They would spend every mating season together and ended up having over 40 babies. Chandler Cruz was born with a form of dwarfism that resulted in her being only 3'6" by the time she was a grown adult. But thanks to advancements in biotechnology, she underwent a life-changing surgery that allowed her to grow 2 extra feet and extended her arms by 4 inches. One day in 1989, about 2 million people from Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia formed a human chain that stretched over 420 miles. They wanted to show their collective desire to escape the Soviet Union and the poverty and suffering that came with communism. After an American Civil War battle in 1862, a group of wounded soldiers in the mud were saved by a mysterious glow that appeared on their wounds. In 2001, 2 teenagers won an international science fair by discovering that their bodies were so cold that it created the perfect conditions for a form of bioluminescent bacteria. This phenomenon, called Angel's Glow, ultimately destroyed the bad bacteria that would have killed them and allowed their wounds to heal instead. Since the 1980s, blues musician Daryl Davis has convinced more than 200 members to leave the Ku Klux Klan. Since the age of 10, he always pondered the question, "Why do you hate me when you know nothing about me?" Davis fights hate with love by simply sitting down with members of the Klan and having a genuine conversation with them, many of whom have simply never spoken with a black man in their entire life. An Australian farmer couldn't attend his aunt's funeral, so he laid out grain in the shape of a heart so that she could see it from the sky. Humpback whales have been known to risk their own lives to protect other animals. There have been many documented cases of humpbacks actively seeking out orca whales and interfering with their attempts to hunt prey, sometimes even carrying the prey to safety. Researchers remain baffled as to why the whales would put themselves in such danger when it gives them nothing in return. When Christopher Reeve was left paralyzed after a horse riding accident, Robin Williams was one of the first people to visit him in the hospital. Dressed as a doctor with a thick accent, he told Reeve he was there to give him a rectal exam, causing him to laugh for the first time in weeks. When the Titanic sank in 1912, there were 3 dogs that made it safely onto a lifeboat and ended up surviving. In 1998, American father John Crowley was told that his 2 babies had an incurable genetic disorder that would kill them in less than a year. But John refused to accept this, so he launched a biotech company even though he had no prior experience in the field. The company would go on to create an experimental enzyme therapy that would save the lives of his kids and many others. Nearly 25 years later, both of them are still alive today. In 2006, two Australian miners who were trapped in a cave requested an iPod containing songs by the Foo Fighters. Upon hearing about this, lead singer Dave Grohl wrote a note to them saying, "I want you to know that when you come home, there's 2 tickets to any food show anywhere and 2 cold beers waiting for you." The men were rescued a few days later, and the Foo Fighters even wrote a song about them. The movie 51st Dates inspired a real-life early dementia treatment across America. Every morning, patients are shown a video message of support from loved ones, just like the video at the end of the movie. In 2019, a Florida man accidentally locked his 1-year-old baby inside of his hot car. That's when 5 nearby prisoners out on work detail came to the rescue with a coat hanger to break her out. The mother who recorded a video of it said, "Them prisoners bust that shit right open. Thank God for the criminals in the world." Peo the French Stallion is a 16-year-old therapy horse that provides comfort to patients suffering from terminal cancer. Each day he chooses which patients he wants to visit by kicking his hoofs outside their doors. This blind pregnant woman got her ultrasound 3D printed and was overcome with joy. In 2005, a bald eagle was shot in the face by a poacher, causing her to lose her beak. She struggled to eat anything and was on the verge of starving until a nonprofit organization gave her a 3D printed prosthetic beak, making her even more badass than ever before. In 2020, a woman from Vancouver had a teddy bear stolen from her which had a voice recording of her deceased mother who passed away from cancer. But after celebrities like Ryan Reynolds offered a cash reward and helped make the story go viral, the teddy bear was soon found and returned. During a Bronx apartment fire in 2010, 18-year-old Vanessa Scott realized that her baby cousin started choking on smoke. That's when she managed to slide the girl through the 5th-story window and held onto her tightly so that she wouldn't suffocate. Both the woman and her cousin ended up surviving. Just days after 95-year-old Jimmy Carter received 15 stitches from falling, the former president traveled to Nashville to help build porches for Habitat for Humanity. For years, Texas father Gordon Hartman struggled to find an amusement park that would accommodate his daughter Morgan's special needs. So in 2005, he decided to sell his successful home building company and built an entire theme park fully accessible to people with special needs. The $50 million park features dozens of attractions, and admissions for people with disabilities are completely free. In 1967, line worker Randall Champion accidentally grabbed a high-voltage line, instantly electrocuting himself and stopping his heart. That's when fellow lineman J.D. Thompson immediately rushed over and performed CPR until paramedics arrived. Champion ended up surviving, and this famous photo became known as the Kiss of Life. This beach in Turkey is one of the only beaches in the world that's accessible to handicapped people. When she was 7 years old, Christina Santhouse was diagnosed with a life-threatening condition that forced doctors to remove half of her brain. But she miraculously grew up to earn a master's degree and now works as a professional speech pathologist. The dog on the left is an award-winning French bulldog named Arnie. The dog on the right is also a French bulldog, but he was bred in the Netherlands by Hawbuck's Kennel. They're a breeder trying to establish a new, healthier template for French bulldogs, which are typically prone to overheating and breathing problems directly related to their flat facial structure. Here's an 1889 photo of a blind Muslim man named Muhammad carrying his best friend, a paralyzed Christian man with dwarfism named Samir. Despite their opposing religious views, each man depended on the other to survive. In 2017, a family swimming at Panama City Beach in Florida was suddenly swept out to sea by a strong rip current. Since there was no lifeguard on duty, over 100 beachgoers formed a human chain to pull the drowning family to safety. While filming the first Guardians of the Galaxy, Chris Pratt stole his Star-Lord costumes from the set. He did this so that he could wear them to visit sick children in the hospital if the film happened to be a hit. Following the 9/11 attacks, the Maasai tribe from Kenya donated 14 cows to the United States. It was the highest regard of sympathy they could have offered, since they view cows as incredibly sacred. A Syrian man with Down syndrome named Jad Issa not only had a child with his wife, but also raised him to become a doctor. A sheep-herding dog named Casper faced off against 11 threatening coyotes and killed 8 of them on the farm. He then went missing for 2 days, most likely to track the remaining coyotes and finish the job. His vet said he's incredibly lucky to be alive, while his owner agreed to let him retire. During World War II, a German pilot spotted an American pilot's crippled plane in the sky. He noticed that the gunner was dead, the crew was injured, and that they didn't pose any threat. So instead of destroying the plane, he led it to safety and spared the men's lives. 40 years later, the two pilots reunited and became fishing buddies. After TV star Jack Benny died in 1974, his widow Mary received a red rose in the mail. After several days of receiving a new rose each day, she finally called to find out who was sending them. The florist told her that Jack had arranged for a new rose to be sent to her every day until she died. This iconic 1987 photo shows Dr. Zbigniew Religa checking his patient's vitals after performing the first successful heart transplant in Poland. His colleague can be seen sleeping in the corner after assisting with the 23-hour-long surgery. Even though the operation was considered to be borderline impossible at the time, he took the chance and it was a complete success, as the grateful patient ended up living on for another 30 years. Price is Right legend Bob Barker reportedly plans on dying broke after donating most of his $70 million fortune to animal foundations and rescues. Third man syndrome is an unseen presence frequently reported by mountain climbers in near-death situations. The presence has been said to give practical advice to the victim while offering comfort and encouragement during the ordeal. Jack Black's character in the 2006 masterpiece Nacho Libre is based on a real Mexican priest. Sergio Gutierrez Benitez fought as a lucha libre wrestler for 23 years to support the orphanage he founded. While Captain Robert Campbell was a prisoner of the Germans during World War I, he asked the Kaiser if he could visit his dying mother in England. Surprisingly, the Kaiser gave him permission on the grounds that he returned to prison afterwards. True to his word, the captain came back. In April of 1988, the roof of an Aloha Airlines jet ripped off after an explosive decompression at 24,000 feet. A flight attendant named Clarabelle Lansing was sadly thrown from the plane while serving a drink, and her body was never found. But she was miraculously the only fatality, as the plane somehow managed to land safely and spare the other 94 lives on board. Game of Thrones star Emilia Clarke has survived 2 near-fatal brain aneurysms that have left pieces of her brain missing. She has since founded a charity called Same You, which helps provide treatment for people who have suffered a brain injury or stroke. A baby penguin was born without feathers at a Chinese zoo and was therefore rejected by his parents. But zookeepers found out he just had some digestive issues, so they fed him by hand until he grew his feathers and was soon reunited with his family. Before the year 1772, potatoes were deemed inedible and were only used as hog feed across Europe. But a French soldier who was taken as POW was fed only potatoes during his captivity and survived. Feeling like he should have died, he made it his life's mission to convince the world of the nutritional value of potatoes. And his tomb is often decorated with potatoes as tribute to this day. Jonathan Goldsmith, the most interesting man in the world in Dos Equis commercials, is known for his extensive charity work over the years. He's been an advocate for landmine victim support, preventing and curing cancer in dogs, saving the Siberian tiger, and ending child sex trafficking in Cambodia. Brazilian mother Silvia Greco won FIFA's Best Fan Award in 2009 after she was seen in the crowd explaining the entire match to her blind son. Little Caesars founder Mike Ilitch quietly paid for Rosa Parks' rent after she was robbed and assaulted in her own home at the age of 81. He helped her move to a safer neighborhood and continued paying her rent until she died 11 years later. In 1996, researchers found a male orca calf with serious boat injuries to the dorsal fin and spine. But despite being unable to hunt, Stumpy was cared for by as many as 5 different orcapods, providing him with food and protection from boats. During the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, hundreds of elderly Japanese people volunteered to repair the facility, preventing a complete meltdown. They knew they would die years before the awful effects of the radiation, so they spared younger workers from the lethal exposure. 2 of Kurt Cobain's best friends, Mark Lanigan and Dylan Carson, say that Courtney Love saved their lives after Kurt's death. They were struggling addicts at the time, and Courtney felt that Kurt would want them to be saved. So she decided to support them both morally and financially so that they could go to rehab and turn their lives around. A man's dying wish was to be buried on his Harley Davidson in a glass casket so that his rider friends could see his final ride. While on death row for killing a police officer in 1987, Tennessee man Philip Workman was told to make his last meal request. But instead of a meal for himself, he wanted a pizza to be donated to a local homeless person. His final request was denied, and Workman refused to eat anything before he was executed that night. But the next day, homeless shelters across Tennessee received thousands of donated pizzas from people all over the state honoring Workman's last request. Keanu Reeves' sister Kim was diagnosed with the deadly blood cancer leukemia in 1991. In response, he sold his home to move closer to her, cleaned her house, cooked her meals, and provided all of her necessary medications. Once she recovered, Keanu started a private charity to fund cancer research in children's hospitals. In 2009, he was interviewed saying, "I don't like to attach my name to it, I just let the foundation do what it does." Frank Sinatra died the night of Seinfeld's finale, and his ambulance made it to the hospital in record time since there was no traffic due to everyone watching the show. Hans Scharf, the most successful Nazi interrogator in World War II, never physically harmed an enemy soldier. Instead, he treated them with respect and kindness, taking them for walks, letting them visit their captured comrades in the hospital, and even letting captured pilots go on test flights. His methods were very successful since virtually everyone ended up talking. In 1998, Wu-Tang member Old Dirty Bastard witnessed a car accident from the window of his Brooklyn recording studio. He quickly ran outside and organized onlookers to help lift the car off of a trapped 4-year-old girl. Using a fake name, ODB later visited the girl frequently in the hospital while she recovered from first-degree burns. When the Red Army captured Hitler's bunker in May of 1945, the only person they found alive was the mechanic Johannes Henschel. After everyone else had either fled or taken their own lives, Henschel had stayed behind to keep the field hospital in the building above supplied with water and power. During the Las Vegas shooting, 29-year-old Marine veteran Taylor Winston's military training kicked into action. He quickly stole someone's truck to drive any wounded victims to the hospital. He and his girlfriend made 2 trips as the shooting took place, picking up the most critically injured victims, and his heroic action likely saved over a dozen lives. In the year 2000, pro wrestler Bam Bam Bigelow, who was known for his iconic Flames outfit and head tattoo, received second-degree burns over 40% of his body while rescuing 3 children from a house fire. He spent 10 days recovering in the hospital after saving their lives. In 2017, a 9-foot-long alligator clamped onto the leg of 10-year-old Florida girl Juliana Osa. But luckily, she remembered a life-saving trick she recently learned at Gatorland theme park. She stuck her fingers up the gator's nose and it instantly released her leg and took off. For the first few years of his life, Mason McDeed cried constantly from his issues with cerebral palsy. His parents struggled to find any way to comfort him until one day his dad put on some Metallica. Soon he noticed Mason had immediately stopped crying and fell asleep, which would work every time he played heavy metal music thereafter. Ever since this revelation, Mason has attended over 500 metal concerts with his dad. On 9/11, a guide dog named Roselle led a group of people, including her blind owner, down 78 flights of stairs before the North Tower collapsed. She stopped only once to give kisses to a woman who was having a panic attack. In Japan in the 1920s, Hachiko the Akita became famous for meeting his owner every day at the railroad station. Even after his owner died, he continued to make the same journey every single day for 9 straight years. In 2014, 3-year-old Karina Chikatova survived in the Siberian wilderness for 11 days with no one except her dog. She ate wild berries, drank from a river, and curled up with her dog for warmth. She was saved when her dog managed to find her village and guide rescuers toward her. During the California Tubbs fire in 2017, a guard dog named Odin refused to leave his flock of goats behind while his owners fled to safety. Days later, the owners returned to their decimated property to find Odin and all of the goats still alive.